As a Roman historian, I am professionally obligated to have an opinion on the movie Gladiator. And I do. It's awesome. Well written, well acted, well done in almost every respect. It's one of my favorite films. So, when Gladiator II came out this week, despite the fact that I was in Japan on my honeymoon, I dragged my wife to a theater in Osaka and watched it on opening night. The main character of Gladiator II is Lucius, played by Paul Mescal. As the film begins, Lucius is living in Numidia, more on that in a moment, resisting an invasion led by the Roman general Acacius, whom you may recognize as Pedro Pascal. The Romans prevail, and Lucius is sold into slavery. He becomes a gladiator in a school owned by Macrinus, aka Denzel Washington, who has grand ambitions. Macrinus brings Lucius to Rome, where games have been organized by the emperors Caracalla and Geta. The rest of the film ensues. Without giving away the plot, I'd like to talk about the historical framing of this movie, move on to some matters of detail, and finally reflect on why historical accuracy matters. Let's start with a bit of context. As mentioned, Gladiator II is set during the joint reign of Caracalla and Geta, the sons of Septimius Severus. In the movie, they're twins. They weren't, but Caracalla was only 11 months older than his brother. The film versions of Caracalla and Geta rule in relative harmony, with Geta taking the dominant role. The historical Caracalla and Geta, by contrast, hated each other so much that they established separate courts. They plotted against each other for the better part of a year, until Caracalla managed to assassinate Geta. He proceeded to have his brother's name struck from every statue and monument in the empire. In the movie, both Caracalla and Geta are weak and debauched, in contrast to the soldiers and gladiators who maintain the traditional virtues of Rome. This is exactly wrong. Both Caracalla and Geta had spent years on the frontier with their father. After he killed Geta, Caracalla presented himself as a reincarnation of Alexander the Great and preferred the company of soldiers to that of senators. On campaign, he ate and marched beside his men. He kept a pet lion beside his throne, not a monkey, as the film has it. In the movie, Caracalla is going mad due to the effects of a venereal disease. The real Caracalla was short-tempered and brutal, but there is no evidence that he was insane. And, as a side note, syphilis, the venereal disease most associated with insanity, wouldn't appear in Europe until the early modern period. In the spring of 217, while campaigning against the Parthians, Caracalla was assassinated by a member of his bodyguard. The real culprit was probably the Praetorian prefect, Macrinus. In the movie, Macrinus is a former slave who runs a gladiatorial school and dabbles in politics. The historical Macrinus was born in what is now Western Algeria. He was educated well enough to set himself up as a lawyer in Rome and to be appointed a prominent official under Septimius Severus. Unlike his counterpart in the film, however, he never became a senator. The versions of Macrinus and Caracalla that appear in Gladiator II, in short, are fictional. The movie's version of Rome is also a fantasy. Ancient Romans did not drink coffee. That wouldn't reach Italy until the 17th century. Nor did they read folding newspapers, another early modern invention. There was no giant gate just outside Rome, which was actually ringed by suburbs and cemeteries, not, as in the film, by picturesque fields. Gladiator II begins, as noted earlier, with the conquest of Numidia. This is historical gibberish. By the beginning of the 3rd century, Numidia had been a Roman province for hundreds of years. The gladiatorial scenes in Gladiator II have little to do with history. During his first fight, Lucius battles some seriously intimidating CGI monkeys. This never happened, for the simple and sufficient reason that real monkeys don't tear people's throats out. Romans did, however, train monkeys to perform tricks in the arena. One famous act involved a monkey dressed as a legionary riding a goat. Another scene in Gladiator II shows a rhinoceros wreaking havoc in the Colosseum. Rhinos appeared in the Colosseum only once or twice a century, since they had to be imported and kept alive all the way from sub-Saharan Africa. Domitian brought a rhino to Rome for the inaugural games of the Colosseum, where it impressed audiences by tossing a bull through the air. A century later, Commodus killed a rhino in the arena. But it's my sad duty to inform you that, as far as we know, no gladiator ever rode a rhino. Probably the most exciting scene in the movie centers on a naumachia, a mock naval battle in the Colosseum. There may have been a few naumachiae in the Colosseum immediately after the superstructure of the amphitheater was completed, but before the maze of subterranean tunnels and cages under the arena had been installed. Once these were in place, it would have been prohibitively difficult to flood and drain the arena. Naumachiae were normally held in purpose-built lakes, which offered far more room for maneuvering. One staged by Augustus, for example, featured 30 large ships and 3,000 fully armed marines. To the best of my knowledge, however, none of these pools was equipped with sharks. Like the original movie, Gladiator II features a plot to overthrow the imperial system and make Rome a republic again. By the reign of Caracalla, after nearly 2.5 centuries of imperial rule, even the dreamiest idealists knew that this was impossible. The soldiers needed the emperors to pay them. The Roman people needed the emperors to feed them. Even the senators needed the emperors, who provided them with patronage and offices. But to a modern audience, restoring the Republic sounds pretty good. And that brings us to what is, in my opinion, the underlying problem with Gladiator II. Gladiator II is not set in ancient Rome. It's set in Hollywood's ancient Rome, or more precisely, in Ridley Scott's ancient Rome. This ancient Rome is nothing more or less than a stage for modern drama. There's nothing wrong with that. It's what Shakespeare did, after all. But a mismatch between ancient setting and modern drama cheapens both. The original Gladiator worked so well because it was a good modern story set in a world that, without being especially historically accurate, felt well-realized enough and different enough from our own to be magical. That, in a movie, is the value of historical accuracy. It turns the background of a story into an organic part of the action. Gladiator II isn't a bad movie. All the parts are well acted, and Denzel Washington is fantastic as Macrinus. There are some nice touches, including a few quotations of ancient authors and engagingly vulgar Latin graffiti. But overall, I found the film disappointing. It struck me as a pale imitation of the original, indifferent to the richness of the world in which it was supposed to be set. For more reviews of movies set in the ancient world, check out my Patreon series, Rome in Review, which is linked on screen and in the description. If you'd like to learn more about my opinions on movies and everything else, you can join my upcoming trip to Greece. There's a link in the description. And for more Told in Stone content, you might enjoy my other channels, Told in Stone Footnotes and Scenic Routes to the Past, both linked, you guessed it, in the description. Thanks for watching.